You've probably heard the usual story that China is a brutal dictatorship, while Western democracies give people a real voice. But here's the twist. In the West, politicians often answer to wealthy donors, while in China, leaders can't be bought and tend to focus on the needs of the majority. Today, we are joined once again by Jerry Gray, a long-time China observer, to explore how representation actually works and to hear an intriguing story of a migrant worker whose efforts helped improve life for millions. It's a story that could only happen in China. So, Jerry, in the West, China is often portrayed as a dictatorship. How does China view itself? How does its political system actually function? And what does the concept of whole process democracy mean in the Chinese context?
Whole process people's democracy, they call it. Yeah. I personally wish they wouldn't use the word democracy because it's not that the word is wrong, but the word is misunderstood in the West. In English language, the word democracy means one vote, one person. That's democracy. That's not democracy at all. I've seen it described as Chinese democracy is a process and with outcomes, whereas democracy in the West is simply a process, nothing more. China is a dictatorship. No question about that. It's written into the constitution. China is a dictatorship of the proletariat. That means that the name people, the word people in the People's Republic of China, in the National People's Congress, in the Chinese Political People Commission, the CPPCC, the word people comes up all the time. The People's Armed Police, the People's Republic of China, the People's Liberation Army, the People's Liberation Army, Navy, Air Force. The word people comes up a lot. And what it means is the people are telling the government how they want to be managed. And that's done through the National People's Congress. The National People's Congress is not made up of party members. I think 60% of the Congress are not Communist Party members. They have other parties, yes, and those other parties are cooperative, not confrontational. So it's not like the two-party system where one party gets in power and says, we're going to do this. 4 years later, 3 years later, or 5 years later, depending on your constitution, another party gets in power and says, we're going to undo this. That doesn't happen in China. So in that respect, continuity is very, very good. And people need to understand that. Now, you could say that Xi Jinping is a dictator. He's not at all. Xi Jinping is put into place by the National People's Congress, and the National People's Congress can remove him. They put him in place and they can remove him. And that's written into the Constitution. So when people say Xi is a dictator, they fail to understand who dictates to him, and that is the people. So whole process people's democracy works incredibly well. And I was the biggest skeptic of it. Like most of the people who criticize China, I was, that's not true. That's not true. I was selected about 3 years ago because of my YouTube. I found out later that it was because of my YouTube. The deputy director of the Guangdong Provincial People's Congress selected me to work with Guangdong Television to make a series of TV shows about the process of democracy in Guangdong. And that process was managed by Guangdong Television. They took me to various different locations inside of Guangdong and allowed me to ask whatever questions I want. They gave me a script, and when I was talking to individuals, I could ask whatever questions I wanted, but I had a script which was basically about whatever aspect of democracy I was looking at in that region. So the script was there, but I was able to rework the script. I mean, it wasn't a case of Jerry say this. It was a case of Jerry, here's some guidelines for you to say. So I would say whatever I wanted to say as long as it stayed within those guidelines. But there was nothing, not a single thing that I was asked to say that I wouldn't have said anyway. So I was given editorial freedom of this. So the I looked at, and we made 6 episodes, and we're making another one next month on the 16th, 17th of October. I'm going with them again to make another episode, which I think will be the final one. And I'm not even sure where we're going, but we're going to a regional part of Guangdong province to look at how a part of democracy works. And it works like this. So I'm going to give you an example from Zhongshan, the town that I live in, the city I live in. A lady who was a member of the National People's Congress had come as a 17-year-old school leaver, had come from Gansu to Zhongshan. She had very little in the way of formal qualifications. She didn't go to university. She was 17, turning 18, and a friend or sister, I'm not sure, had asked her to come and join her because there was work in Zhongshan from Gansu. Gansu is way out in the northwest of China. It borders with Xinjiang and Shanghai and places like that, way out west. So she'd come from rural China into Zhongshan, and when she arrived here, she got a job. And this is why I liked her so much. She got a job exactly the same as me when I arrived in Australia. She started her life on the front gate of a clothing factory. During the daytime, she was a security guard checking things coming in and going out of the factory line. So on her days off, she would only get 2 or 3 days off a month. Instead of having the time, keeping the time to herself, she would go into the factory and she learned how to sew. She learned how to use the machines. Now, that helped her because she was able to use the machines in her own time to make stuff for herself, but she also learned how to operate the machines and work the factory. She was promoted to a machine operator, and she became the senior machine operator. She was then promoted to quality control because in her spare time, she had tried looking at different aspects of quality control, and she improved some services, processes that they had. And so she was promoted to be in charge of the quality control room. Eventually, she ended up as the operational manager of the factory, and that's what she was when I met her. But that's not why she was in the National People's Congress. What she'd done during this period of time, we're talking about a 20-year period, she had got married, she'd had a son, and in the early days, her son was forced, all migrant workers' children were forced to either go back home and live with grandparents, or their mothers were forced to go back home so they could be educated for free in the local school where their hukou was. So they had a household registration in Gansu. She was forced to go back to Gansu with her child. She didn't want to do this. So she contacted local schools and said, how do I get my son into your school? When the son was coming up to the age, and they said, you can't really, you have to pay if you're going to do that. She couldn't afford to pay. So she said, well, can I work as a volunteer in your school? Yeah, we need volunteers. We need people outside the school gates to look after the traffic at school kicking out time and school coming in time. So she did that. And then she did some other volunteer work in the canteen. And she just helped the school out. And eventually they said, well, okay, your child can come to our school. And she had to go through a variety of different hoops, some of them flaming hoops as well. Some of them were very, very difficult, stumbling blocks to get to the point. So what she did was she documented everything. This is a habit she got when she was working as a security guard, documenting everything. She documented the whole process. And then people said to her, how the hell did you get your kid into a local school? We have to send the kid back to live with grandparents. And she said, well, here's this. I've documented it. She wrote it down and she printed it and she would give it copies to her friends. Somebody heard about this in the Zhongshan community and said, can we print this and publish it for other factories? Sure. And then someone from the Provincial People's Congress saw this or heard about this and said, do you want to come onto the Provincial People's Congress so that this could happen everywhere? And she said, sure. Okay, so she became a member of the Guangdong Provincial People's Congress. And somebody in the National People's Congress said, do you think that you could do this nationally? So she became a member of the NPC, going to Beijing every year for the meetings, the big meetings there. And she's met Xi Jinping and stuff like this. This is a girl from a school in Gansu who is a member of the National People's Congress because she had an idea that has helped every single migrant worker in China can now benefit from her idea. That's how whole process people's democracy works. It's a system for so many years. So many migrant workers had complained about this hukou system, which forced them to separate from their children. Chinese mothers love their children. They don't want to be separated for 9, 10 months of the year. They don't want that at all. But that was what was happening. Now it doesn't have to because of this lady. So there's one example, and there are so many others. Laws get changed, but they get changed small. A local government will change it, and then the regional government will say that's a good idea, and then the national government or the municipal government will say this is great, and that's how it develops. That's how whole process people's democracy works.
Thank you, Jerry, for sharing these fascinating insights with us. In our next conversation, coming up in just a few days, we'll dive into Jerry's personal journey. What first brought him to China, why he initially struggled with it, and what eventually made him fall in love with this vast, complex, and captivating country. He's seen it all firsthand, even cycling thousands of kilometers across China to truly understand it. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next adventure. See you soon in the next video.
原来身体比心更诚实是真理。